Arguing for a government monopoly on security is akin to arguing that the New York Times should be the only newspaper by law. Welcome to Keith Knight Don't Tread on Anyone. Today we have Sally Mayweather of Sal the Agorist podcast. Sal, where is the best place to find your work?
SalTheAgorist.com.
And where is the best place to find your 3D printers that people can purchase and create products without operating with the state?
3D Printer Go BRRR.com, where you can buy 3D printers and supplies for cryptocurrency. And also, I'm about to be launching AgoraThreads.com. So we're going to have like a little clothing store for Agorists, and we might turn some of these operations eventually into like crypto only. So,
got it. And also joining me is Peter Quinones of Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast. Pete, where is the best place to find the archive of your work?
LibertarianInstitute.org. My name is on the masthead. Just click.
Sounds good. What we're going to do is each of us are going to say one logical fallacy. We got a total of 9. Explain why it is fallacious and give some examples. I just want to define logic and fallacy before we get started so we're all on the same page. Logic is the study of the principles of reasoning, especially of the structure of propositions as distinguished from their content and of method and validity in deductive reasoning. A fallacy is a statement or an argument based on a false or invalid inference. Sal the Agorist, what is a fallacy that you would like people to know about and look out for?
Well, I'll tell you, when you originally asked me to do this topic, and I started to look at fallacies, it was kind of hard because there are so many fallacies. There's so many fallacious arguments that go around today that it was kind of difficult to choose from. I wrote down like 7 or 8 of them because I figured maybe we would all like double up on some of them just in case. But the first one I have written down is the bandwagon fallacy. So like this is where the idea that an argument is true because it's popular. And like a lot of times we hear this with like the socialists when they talk about healthcare. Oh, 65% of Americans want universal healthcare. Can't you see that this is the best policy? It's like that doesn't make it correct. That doesn't make it proper. So that was the first one I have. That's the bandwagon fallacy.
Pete Quinones of Free Man Beyond the Wall, what is a fallacy you would like people to know about and look out for?
The Ergo decedo fallacy, one of my favorites, and I think we're all familiar with it. It's also called the traitorous critic fallacy, and it works something like this. I think we need to work on improving the taxation system. The current system suffers multiple issues that have been resolved in other places. And the respondent goes, well, if you don't like it, why don't you just leave and go somewhere you think it's better?
It's a classic.
Yeah. And it's the move to Somalia fallacy. That's what it is in our circles.
What was the Latin term for that one, Pete?
Ergo, ERGO, decedo, DECEDO.
All right, mine is the system versus results switcheroo. This is when the arguer responds with which result is desired in response to a question or comment about which system or set of rules would yield desirable results. So when you say which system would over time increase quality and access to healthcare, education, security, and the clean environment, they say, I think everyone should have those and they should be a right. Okay, well, I want everyone to have those. I want everyone to be happy and healthy and married and educated and have health care. So you claiming that you just want everyone to have access to something doesn't actually create access. We have this example with police. Right now, we have free, guaranteed, universal policing and military and education. Does that mean everyone's educated and everyone's protected? There's never a tax on us by other nations? Of course not. It is the opposite. When you give people a monopoly, you get worse results than you otherwise would. It is fallacious because most everyone wants a good result. Well, most everyone that we deal with, of course, there are evil conspirators that we're also up against. But the process or moral approach to achieving said goal is very often where people differ. Sal the Agorist, next fallacy.
Damn, you guys are picking all like the exotic ones from like advanced logic. I got all the beginner ones here. The next one I have here is the false dilemma fallacy. right? This is when they try to present you with only like they're trying to frame your argument with. Is that you, Pete? Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry, I got another one.
I can change it. Okay, all right. So like a lot of times, like a good one.
Oh no,
here
I didn't have that one. Sorry, I apologize. But it is one of my favorites.
Okay.
So go.
Yeah. So a lot of times I hear this one. It's like, well, like if I'm complaining about the wars, well, it's like, well, what do you want to spend the money on? Welfare? Like, do you prefer like that? Like, it's always one or the other, right? If I don't want to spend it on welfare, then it's, well, what would you prefer them that they drop bombs with your money instead? It's like, why does it have to be one of the two? Why can't it just be I keep my own money in my pocket? So that's the false dilemma fallacy.
Pete, next fallacy.
All right. The next fallacy is the slippery slope fallacy. And normally it's the arguer claims that a sort of chain reaction, usually ending in some dire consequence, will take place. But in fact, there is no evidence, and it's all an assumption. And usually it's an argument from bad faith. You see this a lot in foreign policy. Whenever you want to talk about, well, there's no reason we should have bases in Germany anymore. Well, then Russia's just going to invade Europe and take over Europe. It's like, well, what evidence do you have for that they even want to do that? It's a perfect fallacy, and we hear it all the time. And we're not above it either. Libertarians use it every once in a while too to make their arguments. And I've seen it a lot. So that's one of my favorites. But really, in foreign policy is where you get slammed with that one.
My next one is appeal to obviousness. This is the claim that since X is obvious, X needs no independent justification. It often changes with time when arguer experiences cognitive dissonance. For example, let's travel back in time to 2003, and you say, I think the government's spying on everyone because of this claim called stellar wind, and I think they're collecting all our data and all our phone calls. You must be an extremist conspiracy theorist if you actually believe that that's true. And then William Benny and Edward Snowden come out, and it's obviously all true. And to which they say, well, obviously but they're just doing it because they need to collect data to keep us safe from the terrorists. Or it will be, I just had this the other day. The U.S. Foreign policy, the reason we're better than the other countries is we don't kill civilians. And I said, well, there is the Bradley Manning video of actual civilians getting killed on film. And he goes, well, we don't target civilians. And I said, do you see how you just moved the goalpost there? And you go, well, obviously, that's called collateral damage, the guy then said. So they just give something a name when you've proven them wrong. They just go, obviously, yeah, that's totally obvious. So when I shockingly had a family member at dinner say to me that he's very well aware of documents like the McCullen memo and the research on Pearl Harbor, that it was intentionally provoked to get the U.S. into war on behalf of the Allies. To which he goes, well, obviously, we needed a way in. There were too many people like you who were isolationists who wouldn't listen to logic, so that's what we had to do. Of course, I get taxation isn't theft. If you don't chip in, they put you in a cage and shoot you in front of your kids if you resist. And they go, well, obviously, we got to fund stuff, obviously. And two more examples, just because this one's everywhere. I debated a neocon the other day. I'm going to upload that soon. He says, we don't negotiate with terrorists. And I said, let me see. By we, of course, you're talking about the mass murdering state that claims the right to rule us. Okay, so that's wrong. What about Chairman Mao? Kissinger seemed to negotiate with him, probably the most evil person or most deadly person of all time. They also negotiated and allied with Stalin. Zbigniew Brzezinski used China to work with Pol Pot in Cambodia. Saddam Hussein, Rumsfeld negotiated with him. They negotiated with the Mujahideen in the 80s. So, I mean, that's just a lie. And he goes, well, obviously, sometimes you got to take, the lesser of two evils when you're trying to fight something totally evil. So someone will just say something's obvious. This is fallacious because the appearance of something being obvious or in high demand does not make it the best available option, nor does it account for costs, nor justify the claim morally. Sal the Agorist, next fallacy.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you definitely hear that one all the time. All right, so the next one I have is, I guess the next one I would choose here that I've written down is appeal to emotion. So this one is just all over the place in politics. Probably The best example of this fallacy that was ever created and never will be created was AOC's tweet, or I'm sorry, was a statement she made in like that interview. I forget, what was it? Something like, some people are more concerned with being factually correct than morally correct, and that's wrong. And like the whole idea that you're supposed to put someone's feelings over facts and logic and consistency is absurd. Another wild example of this, I don't think I saw this. This was just like a day or two ago. Senator Blumenthal from, I believe, I want to say Connecticut, but don't hold me to that. He, I'm not even kidding. You can look it up because you guys aren't going to believe me. He tweeted out like, the furniture is too unstable, so we have to pass the Sturdy Act, and we have to start regulating furniture. He says the furniture manufacturers have been unregulated for far too long. We owe it to the children, is how he ended his tweet. I swear on my life, I'm not making this up. So it's all about the children, right? Like the children are being crushed by dressers, and the chair is gonna fall off the leg, and they're gonna get hurt. So we have to cartelize the entire carpentry industry and let Blumenthal, and all of his cohorts, extract money for their political action committees. It's all a scam, and it's all based on the appeal to emotion. Frankly, whenever you hear a politician justify something like it's for the children, then that is an appeal to emotion.
Pete Quinones, what is your next one?
The false equivalence fallacy. It's a logical fallacy drawn between two subjects based on flawed or false reasoning. A real obvious one that I get is I've been getting more into medical choice, which means like informed consent, vaccine choice, things like that. I mean, and with these ridiculous friggin' novel vaccines that they came up with in 2 weeks, it's like, all right, what the hell's going on here? But yeah, so if this one's so typical. Well, I mean, I think that people should really be informed, and they should just have a choice whether to take it or not. Well, that you're an anti-vaxxer. That's the false equivalence. It's just you make one argument, and they try to equate it to something else, and it's nowhere near the ballpark. And you see that with tons. I mean, that is just Twitter. A Twitter argument in a nutshell is the false equivalence. Is like
That's so true. In my argument with the neocon the other day, I go, I got to give this guy credit. We've been going for an hour and a half. He hasn't called me a terrorist or a racist. And like 40 seconds later, he called me a racist Al-Qaeda sympathizer. And I go, there he is. My whole worldview was turned upside down because I wasn't called that for a whole debate.
I can't believe he didn't worship at your feet and want to wash your feet, considering you're a Jew. And, it's like, that's who they worship,
I can't catch a break. It's terrible. Final fallacy for me, and of course we got time to go around, is the unconscious genesis fabrication. This is when the arguer projects good intentions onto an action or policy in the absence of evidence that such good intentions existed. For example, the reason we have state schools monopolizing compulsory education is because we as a society decided that education is vitally important. And I go, I'm sorry. I actually read the works of Charlotte Thompson Nisbet, John Taylor Gatto, Anthony Sutton, and Matt Ridley in The Evolution of Everything. That's not what I got at all from that work. What did you get this from? And he goes, well, I mean, government's the mechanism you use to achieve things. People would rationally decide this. So in other words, without even realizing it, this person was lying about the origin of schools. Well, Medicare and Medicaid, this is one where you could say, well, we as a society decided that we need to help the elderly and the impoverished to access health care. Thomas Sowell goes over this very clearly in it's his the second book after A Conflict of Visions. It's not Cosmic Justice, but he actually goes through the arguments that were made at the time, and it is not the case at all. The most obvious example is Social Security. So I'm quoting from Bob Murphy's The Politically Incorrect Guide to the New Deal. He quotes Senator Robert Lafayette during the Social Security debates. If we adopt the Clark Amendment, the government, having determined to set up a federal system of old age insurance, will provide its own bill creating the system's competition which in the end may destroy the federal system. It would be inviting and encouraging competition with its own plan, which would ultimately undermine and destroy it. It has nothing to do. The origin of welfare, of course, is Otto von Bismarck's plan to get people reliant on the state so they wouldn't resist the Kaiser if they ever saw the Kaiser as illegitimate.
Mm-hmm.
The Federal Reserve, I get this all the time. We have these regulations to protect us from panics. Not the case at all, and we have the words of Frank Vanderlip and the conspirators that G. Edward Griffin published. Harry Brown was excellent with this, where people would say, the old joke is history started on September 11th, 2001, and we can never look to one day before to see what might have provoked it. Of course, Israel uses it all the time, that, well, there's just terrorists. I mean, Hezbollah is just trying to kill us for no reason, when Hezbollah was literally the creation that resulted from Israel's 1982 invasion of Lebanon. And about 3 years later, Hezbollah was created. It is fallacious because it claims to make a common sense claim where an empirical one would be expected. Sal, were there any other fallacies you came across which you think are just vital to making sure we don't get manipulated by friends, politicians, and the media?
Yeah, especially now. So, like, another big one is the appeal to authority, and like you hear this all the time with Comrade Fauci, right? Like, if he tells you have to have 4 muzzles on your face and you have to let Nancy Pelosi shove a Q-tip up your ass, then that's what you have to do, because that's what Dr. Fauci, the chief health minister, said. So you also hear this with libertarians, like. Even I'm sure I'm guilty of it. Like, oh, well, Rothbard said, X, Y, and Z. So, so I mean, we all, and that's the thing too about all these fallacies. It's not that it's just the people who we argue with and oppose that are subject to these fallacies, but it's us as well. So,
totally agree, Pete. What are some other ones you want to make sure that we all are either taught or reminded of, so we don't succumb to the craziness?
Another one that is most famous on social media, the straw man fallacy. Where you're arguing something and you're making a great point, and then they totally just change it and make an argument against something that you haven't been, something that's usually like ridiculously easy to burn down, which is why they call it a straw man fallacy, because all you have to do is apply a little bit of a spark to it and it goes away. And they just totally change the subject, totally move away from it, and boom, then you're in. If you're not aware that that's happening, now you're arguing something else. I mean, it happened to me today. Somebody did it to me today, and I fell for it. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got to go back to the beginning here. Hold on.
It's like, or like another time you hear that one is like, oh, like you don't believe in taxing the rich, well then like you must be like some like corporate shill or something like that. It's like, no, just because I don't believe in taxing people doesn't mean I support or promote corporations whatsoever. So
exactly.
Yeah, or if you and one of the real obvious ones is, hey, we need to get our troops the United States needs to get its troops out of Syria. Oh, so you're an Assad toady.
Right.
It's just a perfect one.
That was a great moment when Barry Weiss was on Joe Rogan's show, and she's like, the problem with Tulsi is she's an Assad toady. And he goes, well, why is that? And she's like, oh, this is obvious. It was my sort of, appeal to obviousness. It's like, why do I even need to defend that? I call a former soldier a traitor. Why do I need evidence for that? It's amazing.
It's even better. She didn't know what a toady meant. Because he asked her, so what's a toady? And she didn't know what it was. And it's like, okay. So
they're just at this point, they're just like they're just like exhibiting sounds at this point and nonsensical noises.
Well, I heard that somewhere and it sounds good. So that's what I'm going to run with.
That's exactly
on the Joe Rogan show.
Yeah. That's what an NPC is. It's bad enough they don't have independent thought, but they don't have independent expression. So it's like bad enough to think it's like, well, the government's legitimate because in my experience, A, B, and C, and you list all these things. And well, the media is good because they informed me about a thing. That's bad enough. But when they are literally just repeating talking points, mask up, the new normal, Fauci said A, B, and C, toady, this kind of stuff is just that's when it literally is a non-player character simply responding to stimulus as opposed to any critical thought. I want to go around and mention one or two or three books that you thought were very helpful in helping you think. So even though something like, Rothbard or Larkin Rose's great books really educated us maybe philosophically, what is a book that really changed your approach to thinking logically, rationally, and seeing things clearly? Or if it wasn't a book, maybe an author. To give you a second to think, for me, just quick and easy, it was a book titled The Use and Abuse of Logic, How to Win Every Argument by Madsen Priory. He's the head of the Adam Smith Institute. It's just 100 fallacies, and he goes one by one. Here's the fallacy. Here's an example. Here's why it's fallacious. It's such a great read, too, because it's so easy. You can read one fallacy a day, and at the end of, it'll take you 1 minute each, and then by the end of 3 months, you've totally conquered the book. Sal Mayweather, what is a book that changed your way of thinking or approach to thinking logically?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to give you an author rather than one particular book, because it's really all of his books that really influenced me, and that it's kind of sounds cliche, but that's Socrates. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, by actually reading the Socratic dialogues, like, I don't know about you guys, but like, I had this weird phase when I was like 13 or 14 where I just kind of like locked myself in my room in my house. I was just kind of this weirdo. But it was fortunate in the sense that I spent all of that time reading like really obscure philosophy. And that is what sort of sent me down the path where I am today. Socrates was wrong about a lot of things, particularly like private property and stuff like that. But he shouldn't be read for his conclusions. I think he should be read for his method of thinking, and like particularly like the Socratic method and stuff like that. So reading like the Republic and Phaedo and Symposium and even like Aristotle and stuff like that, that really helped me see the power of like logical consistency. And years later, when I found agorism and Sam Konkin, that's when everything sort of hit me like a brick in the wall. I was like, wow. Here is like a logic. Someone's put political theory together and economic theory together in a way that's logically consistent. So I would probably say Socrates.
And the works, because of course there's nothing like, there's no book by Socrates. The ones you're referencing are Plato's Republic and what was the other one?
Anything really by Plato. He was like sort of his like transcriber, I guess you would say. But I some of my favorites would be the Symposium, Phaedo, the Laws, the Republic, stuff like that. It's all great stuff. And any of the Socratic dialogues, I recommend.
Excellent. Pete Quinones, books that helped you think clearly.
Back when I was going to church, there was a guy in there who was brilliant, and he had like advanced degrees, and he seemed very logical in his thinking, and I was like, I wanted to learn more about logic, and he lent me a book of logical puzzles by Lewis Carroll, and I went through that book, and it was fascinating. I mean, it was stuff that it was mind bending, where he would, if R is here and Q is here, and just like these amazing things. And then all you have to do is go read Alice in Wonderland. I mean, he wrote Alice in Wonderland, and some of the conversations, Alice will ask a question and the response will be like, well, yeah, wouldn't that be eminently logical? And it was like, almost, there were so many conversations like that finished in, well, that's eminently logical. And yeah, I think a lot of Lewis Carroll. He actually wrote a book called Symbolic Logic that I started, but it was just, I mean, that guy was beyond brilliant. He was.
I didn't even know that he did Symbolic Logic, Carroll.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah. He was that dude was probably one of the smartest people that ever lived. Yeah.
I give you more credit than me, Pete, because when I was in my days as a statist, I was studying to be a lawyer, and I was trying to take the LSAT, and it was all logic games, and that was like mental, like torture. It was very difficult. Like you said, it would be like, well,
all those IQ, all those online IQ tests and everything.
Yeah.
Like I score like 200 on all of them, because they're all these logical puzzles and everything, and I can just look at them and see them. You know, and it drives my wife crazy because she's like, you know, she takes them and she doesn't see it like I can and everything, because they're all just puzzles, and I just look at them and I'm like, yep, yeah, that right there and everything. I just go, and half the time yeah.
Isn't it weird how like everybody who has an appreciation for logic always winds up at agorism? Isn't that odd?
Yeah,
it's like a pattern.
Yeah.
So now that we have nailed down logic in only 27 minutes, good for us, what are some ways that you think any freedom advocate, anyone trying to push the needle, anyone trying to get people to think rationally can improve messaging? So let's start with Pete. I know you've had some shows on how to improve the messaging. So anyone advocating self-ownership, some sort of self-reliance, independence, agorism, voluntary exchange, ability to work within communities, how would you advise people on how to get the message of freedom and self-ownership out to either just people in their local community or people across the world through the internet?
Honestly, it has to be done one person at a time. It's the only way it works. I mean, you could, I guess, small groups, things like that. I mean, we have a freedom cell here, and we don't all agree. We agree on most things, but there are some conversations that go and get heavy and everything. Not like, you know, loud or anything like that, but they can get pretty deep. I just find that talking online to people. I mean, I have good luck talking online to people, but you know, it's hard to. For every if you talk to 25 people online, one is like a serious seeker. But just talk. I mean, my brother, I spent time with my brother. My brother is like a Tucker Carlson kind of Republican, and you know, we were talking about you know, he basically has the same kind of border policy that any of the Trumpers would have, where, you know, it's like, well, you know, just we can't, these people, they're coming here and they're getting on welfare and everything like that. And I'm like, dude, I know I would end the welfare state in a second. I said, but you have to understand, no one wants to hear this, but the God's honest truth is that there are jobs that are here that Americans just will not do.
Yeah.
And these people come over the border, they're willing to do this job. And I mean, if we don't let them come here, if we don't figure out a way for them to come here very easily, very simply, and do these jobs, we're gonna be short products. I mean, we're gonna be short food. And yeah, I made him because I mean, it's kind of hard with families sometimes because they don't see you. They see you as, you know, he sees me as the guy who used to kick the shit out of him when we shared a bedroom when we were, you know, kids and everything. So, but you know, now I guess he sees me differently, and he listened, and he's like, you know, and just at one point he conceded. He's like, yeah, you know, we gotta find a way to let people get here. And then I said to him, I said, you know, with everything that was said about Trump, the guy stopped pretty much before COVID. He stopped immigration from everywhere, even places where, you know, where like the alt-right would want, like the Nordic countries. I mean, he was stopped immigration from there. So it's like, I mean, why did he stop all this? Well, why can't we have people come here and everything? And he's like, yeah, I know, you're right. You just got to talk to, it's almost one-on-one. I mean, have a podcast, go out there, you know, reach out to the masses, do what you can, but in your own personal life, and especially locally, it's really going to be one-on-one or getting in front of small groups, things like that. I mean, it's really the only way I see it.
And the immigration question is always interesting because it's never a debate over who should we, you know, let onto our property and who should we do business with. It's only a big problem when there's a big old thing called public property and there's a state claiming rulership over everything. Don't they see that we would all have the ability to include or exclude anyone we'd like to at any amount for any time at any reason if they would embrace the principles of self-ownership, voluntary exchange, and private property. I mean, it's amazing that they're complaining to us about something we've been advocating for so long, and they can't. We're handing them an olive basket. They spit in our face and say, "What we really need is an olive basket." Son of a gun!
And
How much
that,
more?
that's the pro-market party, right? That's supposed to be the market. That's like the Republican parties are supposed to be like the pro-market party. So
Exactly. Sal, what are some ways you have improved messaging or seen effective ways of communicating to non-government believers that you think are effective?
So I'm going to echo what Konkin wrote in the primer and the manifesto, was just to lead by example, right?
Yeah.
So not even in the sense where, like, live according to the NAP so others will see you living according to the NAP. That's true, but that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, like, create economic incentives, create innovation that will make people naturally inclined to join the liberty movement. So what I mean by that is, like, look at what Satoshi Nakamoto did, right? So you can sit back and you can not, increase your portfolio by having exposure to cryptocurrencies. You can remain in fiat currency if you'd like, but it's not in your financial interest to do so, right? You can, you can trust that the government isn't going to, take advantage of gun-free zones like every other authoritarian regime ever has. Or you can buy a 3D printer, right? To spend that $200 is sort of like an insurance policy. It's kind of like, a way to prepare. So I would say to create the economic incentives to innovate and to sort of create new technologies that people are going to want to use in general. Another good example of this is you see, like, these decentralized social media platforms that have sort of, they're growing and growing because everybody's being kicked off of the sort of legacy social media platforms.
Yeah, I have had so much luck with Odyssey. BitChute, I'm still having trouble with, things processing. As far as your favorite alternative media places, I'd say my favorite Twitter replacement is Minds.com and MeWe also, but I saw MeWe on their Twitter account talking about how we've made sure to ban accounts that are questioning the results of the 2020 election. I said, oh, I never should have left Minds at all. But I got some groups on MeWe, and we're using it while we can, just like Facebook. So the two that I advocate are Minds.com as a replacement for Twitter and Facebook, and Odyssey/library.tv. Those are excellent. I've spoken with the CEO twice, Jeremy Kaufman. He's been on my channel. Pete, what are your two favorite go-tos for alt media?
I mean, Odyssey, Library Odyssey, everything gets backed up there. YouTube nuked a live stream that I did with Ben Armani, where we were talking about the Time Magazine article where they were talking about fortifying the election. I mean, they nuked it. They said that we were inciting violence in it, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I've said some shit lately. So let me go back. let me go back. Let me go back and listen to this. And I listened to it, and I'm like, there's nothing. I mean, there was nothing there. And they just decided. I'm so glad it was backed up on Library Odyssey, because it really, what else? What else is there? Now, this is a legacy site and everything, but I still try and post stuff on Instagram. I get great interaction on Instagram. It's amazing. I mean, I can get 200 to 400 likes on pretty much anything I put on there, 800 to 1,000 on, and I don't really post on there much, and I don't really spend much time on there, but I throw memes up there every once in a while. And but I mean, a lot of interaction, and then if I don't post anything there for a while, people will hit me up on like other platforms. They'll be like, post stuff up on Instagram, post stuff up on Instagram. I mean, I know it's owned by Facebook and everything, but I haven't been nuked on Facebook, but I mean, I've had so many 30-day suspensions now. It's ridiculous. I think I've had one warning on Instagram, and they've just pretty much left me alone.
Sal the Agorist, what are your favorite alt media sites people should check out? Hey, Sal. Sal, are you still with us?
Hey there. Hello.
Hey,
Okay, there you
Sal. Go. Sal, we can hear you now. What are two of your favorite alternative media sites?
Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure where I cut off, but I also use Minds and MeWe, Instagram. I use Snapchat, all the different social media platforms. But the ones that I prefer are the ones that are tokenized, because that's where I think all the ones that we mentioned that have already been mentioned that are successful, library. I'm not sure about Minds as well. I don't know too much about Odyssey, but are tokenized, and with tokenized content, you own the content. So on Minds, you get tokens based on how popular your content is. Not Mark Zuckerberg, right? Not Jack. It's not, those guys don't profit off of your content. You profit off of your content. So the key is to make sure you're using some sort of tokenized platform. Minds is great. It's still a little clunky for me because I'll post 10 to 20 memes at a time. And it's sort of it takes a while to scroll through the process of selecting a meme, and then it has to you have to upload, and it's sort of still a little clunky. MeWe's great, but like you said, it's still centralized. Snapchat is pretty good. I've been suspended from every platform though. I got suspended last week from Twitter for 12 hours because I said that the Super Bowl parties in Tampa disproved the mainstream COVID narrative, and they said that I was glorifying violence. So rather than appeal it, my what I do is I just say, yeah, okay, I'll delete it, because that then they're gonna delete your account entirely. I've had ads for 3 Printer Go Burr that have nothing to do with firearms removed from Facebook and Instagram for promoting the use of firearms and weaponry. Yeah, it's a disaster at these legacy platforms. I'm hoping that it gets more and more decentralized as time goes on, though.